Have you had psychedelic experiences yourself?
I have, yes. It's interesting to comment on that because I know I've gone back and forth in my head about this because you hear some researchers saying, if you're a researcher and you admit you did psychedelics, you're harming your credibility because it makes you seem unbiased and makes you seem like somebody who's out there to prove the psychedelic gospel because they
Mm,
experienced it and they know it's this, X, Y, and
hmm.
Z. But at the same time, what I would argue, and I know people would argue, is that if you don't have some kind of first-person experience, you can never understand what's going on with these drugs. You can have all the quantitative statistics and these abstract measures, but like you really, it's just words and numbers if you haven't had the experience. And furthermore, I think having the experience helps you create new hypotheses to test and really understand what's going on. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because a lot of researchers decline to answer that question.
Interesting.
But
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. It makes logical sense, but yeah, I would presume exactly what you said, which is it's hard to comment on it in a meaningful way unless you have experienced it. Do you recall your first experience or any details you're comfortable sharing?
yeah, yeah. So my first experience was at a beach. I was probably, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. Some magic mushrooms, some psilocybin containing mushrooms. And that experience really allowed me to step back from my usual way of perceiving the world. And I saw myself from a third person perspective. So I saw my, how I was behaving and how I was thinking and how the other people around me were behaving as well. But like from the perspective of it's gonna sound pretty funny, and this is really funny. The 17-year-old thinking these things, but I was like, I just felt like we're a bunch of primates, so a bunch of essentially monkeys, advanced monkeys, acting in these behaviors which are just a result of a particular evolutionary heritage and like our own behavioral tendencies we have with associated with coming from that lineage, and I just like thought it was fascinating to see as if like I'm another species seeing humans,
Mhm.
including myself. And anyway, so in the end, this experience made me like much more reflective on how relative our perception of the world is, and how like we can perceive the world in radically different ways. And we live a lot of our lives in this myopic kind of tunnel vision. And it made me really reflect on the potential of the mind and what does it mean to have a more clear experience of reality? What does that even mean? And how can these drugs teach us about the kind of fundamental way we frame our reality, you know?
And have you had, presumably you've had other experiences since then? Are you learning and taking away different things with each experience, or is it all sort of like continuing to solidify maybe some of those takeaways that you had the very first time?
Yeah, it's been very different, since then. But I think these days I'm very interested in going beyond my own personal case and seeing in general what are people experiencing. Because I think you can only go so far based on my own anecdotal kind of experiences. Now, there's a lot of survey studies being done these days by John Hopkins in London and all sorts of places on usually collecting, hundreds or thousands of people answering a bunch of questions about their experiences, and it's really interesting to see what comes out because the psychedelic experience itself is like hugely variable. The same person will never have the same experience twice, and if two people in the same room take some mushrooms, they're gonna have radically different experiences. So then it's how can we collect enough data that we can abstract and see the consistencies? What is the structure that's present across multiple people? And also an interesting question for me is what's the progression over multiple trips? Is there one? Is
Hmm.
there some kind of inherent teleology to the psychedelic experience which is trying to take you somewhere as you heal more and integrate more and access deeper states? And obviously people have varying opinions on that, but I think that's what I'm more interested in these days is like what's really going on at a larger level.